Hello. I think I'm live. Let's have a look. Yes, I think we're live. I think I'll wait until it gets just to 4. But hello, everyone. Feel free at any point to ask questions, by the way, and I'll see if I can answer them. Righto. Well, maybe I should just start now. There's a few of you there. Hello. My name is Dan O'Neill. I'm a biologist, wildlife filmmaker, and presenter, and I live here in Bristol. And I'll start off by giving a little intro about myself before going on to some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of being in the Amazon and searching for a big cat. But yes, so I originally studied zoology at the University of Sheffield, and then after that went on to do a master's in wildlife filmmaking here in Bristol. And that's kind of how I got into this industry. But way before that, I was always really, really interested in animals. I was always the kid that would try and get the trapped bird out of the classroom, or the one that was playing down the road with the slow worms in my next door neighbour's compost heap rather than playing football with my brother. And so it's kind of been a lifelong passion of mine. Hi, Annie. But yeah, so really my background of getting into kind of exploration and expeditions and wanting to be really remote, I guess, came from my dad, because he was always really interested in being in really remote places, but didn't really have the opportunity to do it. He loved exploration. He loved feeling like he was in the wild. He loved animals, but his background was in physics and eventually going into computing. So he spends a lot of his time in an office. But what he did do is once every sort of like couple of years, he would want us to go on some kind of big trip. So he would spend 2 or 3 weeks going sailing, and he would absolutely love doing that. So we ended up going to lots of places in Central America. And that was the first time I kind of saw the rainforest when I was a kid, which was absolutely amazing. It completely changed my idea of the world. And when we came back to England, obviously British nature is amazing, but it was one of those transformative times in my life where I became really obsessed with those jungle animals. We saw these amazing endemic birds that lived on St. Lucia. And yeah, it was such an amazing thing. And and so from there, I just became really into biology, and I studied at school really, really hard because I knew that I wanted to do it when I got older. Which I would say that's probably how all of this comes about, is from studying biology. Because back then, I even remember having gone to these places and really wanting to, look into it and study it or do some kind of career in it. But I was just thinking, how does that actually happen? And it's kind of now looking back, having studied at a university, there really is that progression of working in biology at school and then going to university, and then it kind of opens all these doors to go to these places. But yes, after school, went to study zoology at Sheffield, and then it was while I was there that I got the opportunity to go to Guyana to kind of work on this species diversity study. And we went to this place. Guyana is a country in the north of South America. It's not very well known. It's around about the size of England, but it has the entire population of the country is about that of just Liverpool, about 750,000 people. And about 95% of those people live on a tiny coastal strip and the capital city, Georgetown. And then the rest of them live in the interior, the indigenous population. But the most amazing thing about Guyana for me is that it's around 80% primary rainforest. Primary rainforest is relatively untouched, still looks pretty pristine. And so we went really, really far into the jungle, and we got these trucks, and we were driving through this one big dirt road. Felt like proper exploration, going back in time. And we were driving along, and then we went to this place called Iwakrama. And it was there that I sort of cut my teeth on understanding Amazonian animals. And we were catching bats at night with these mist nets, and checking all of these amazing diversity of bats. Guyana has more, this one particular area of Guyana has more species of bats than anywhere else on the earth. It's 96 different species of bats, from these tiny little Nomus species with yellow ears to this giant Vampira spectrum, or the false vampire bat, which is a big predatory bat species that catches other bats in the nets, and that's how you catch them. And then we'd be doing the same mist netting for birds during the day. So we'd be catching all different kinds of birds, from these little mannequin birds that you might see on TV shows doing these crazy little flips backwards and forwards, I call them the kind of birds of paradise of the Amazon, or to kingfishers. So the very first bird I ever ringed in the Amazon was an American pygmy kingfisher. Beautiful, beautiful species. Yes, hello Benito. Someone's just come on. Who I was actually there with, Benito. I met him there, and that was one of the most amazing things about that trip. Meeting a lot of different scientists and people wanting to do the same things as me. But it was on that trip that I first tried to see a jaguar. We all did, actually. Everybody on that trip. We were really obsessed with the idea of finding a jaguar. And it didn't happen. We were setting camera traps and looking through data, and we did get to see a couple of pictures of camera traps that had been set before. But actually, during the time that we were there, none of the traps that we'd set had got any jaguars. And years go past, and I was working in Mexico on a project, a similar kind of thing. But I was working as one of the lead scientists, habitat scientists, with students. And I was thinking, this is the perfect opportunity. I was there for a lot longer, a couple of months, right out in the remote areas, and it was a really good place to see jaguars. It was in the Calakmul Biosphere Reserve, where these beautiful Mayan temples that had only really been discovered properly and unearthed in 2005. So it was a really, really awesome place to be. And this really healthy population of jaguars, I was like, gonna see one. And we were in this camp that they'd called Kilometer 40, because it was the 40th kilometer down this road. And we knew that there was a jaguar that lived very close to it. And they'd named him Mick Jaguar because they'd seen him so many times. And he lived just around the back of it. So everyone would wake up really early in the morning. Okay, questions just come through. How dangerous is the Amazon rainforest? I'm going to get onto that in just a second. That's the next thing I want to talk to you about. But yes, this jaguar, we got there, and I never got to see him. I'd been there for a couple of months, and students would come in and they would leave, and a new student would come in, and I'd be sat at the desk. We'd be looking at some data. And I'd just been out for a day, and a student would come in, they go, you never guessed, Dan, we've just gone out, we walked down the trail literally about 10, 15 meters from camp, and you'll never guess what we saw on the trail, a jaguar. And I'm like, oh, amazing, great. Of course, it's amazing they got to see them, but I was so desperate to find one. And so that brings me on to my biggest ever expedition that happened last year. Around this time last year, I was getting back, actually, and I went on a big trip with my friend Ashley Holland and his son Shannon and some others, and it was 7 of us going up to the very remotest parts of the Guyanese rainforest, up this river called the Rewa, to try and find a jaguar. And answering that question that just came through about how dangerous is the Amazon, I'll talk to you a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'll start with the ugly stuff. So the Amazon, it's an interesting question, really, because is it super dangerous? There are dangerous things in the Amazon, absolutely. But one of the things that I noticed when I went there is it's not quite as, it is scary, like the feeling of going there, but it's not quite as scary as it is in reality. There's some really dangerous things there, and some really ugly things, like parasites. So I'll talk to you a bit about those. There's a particular parasite, it's quite common, especially in the rainy season, and that's sort of in our summertime, called the Botfly. And it's a little fly that will go to leaves, and it will lay its eggs on leaves, or it'll even catch mosquitoes and lay its eggs on the underside of the mosquito and then let it go. And then as you're walking through the jungle, you might rustle the leaves and the eggs might fall down onto you, or you might be bitten by a mosquito and the heat of your skin will mean that they drop off and they'll land on your skin, and they'll immediately hatch once they hit your skin, and then they'll go in. And then those little tiny maggots get a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not particularly life-threatening at all. I mean, you can get infections and stuff, but those will grow in, and that's a pretty nasty one. I've never got one myself. You'll probably be disgusted to hear that I'm absolutely desperate to get one myself. I really, really want one. So I've been walking around trying to get them on my skin because I just think it'd be a really amazing experience. But that's a pretty nasty one. And then there's other ones. So obviously you get little nasty bites, but there's a particular fly called a Cabora fly, and amazingly it doesn't really respond to mosquito repellents, and it's this tiny little sand fly, and they can carry a illness called leishmaniasis or leishmaniasis, which is really, really bad, and that can grow quite terribly in you, but it's not quite as common. So that's pretty bad. And there's also some other, it's not particularly life-threatening. Well, leishmaniasis can be. So leishmaniasis is a nasty one. When I was last there, we were going up the river, and there were some fishermen there, and they were from Bolivia, and so they understood these things. And he showed, and I looked at him, and he was like, I had leishmaniasis, and he showed me on his leg, and he had this kind of horrible kind of scar, healing scar, and they have to inject like some nasty things into you to get rid of it. So it's pretty nasty, but it can be cured. But another one, it's not quite so bad, but it's really important when you're in the Amazon to keep good hygiene, because it's so humid, and you can get, I don't know if you've ever had athlete's foot, but that's really common there. So you've got to keep on top of your hygiene. But when we were super remote, there were no showers. We were sleeping in hammocks with tarpaulins that we'd pack up every day and get on the river and go up. So you've got to wash in the river. So we'd go into the river, and we would be washing ourselves, and you're thinking, that's terrible, because there's some nasty stuff in there. You've got anacondas, you've got black caiman, which are one of the largest crocodilians on the planet, probably I think maybe the largest alligator species on Earth. They can get really, really big, adults between sort of 8 and 14 feet in length, really big. But actually, if you listen to the people you're with, and the guide that I was with, Ashley, and we were with a guy called Rambo and Josie and Shannon as well, these people, they knew when it's safe and when it's not. So we would go in there to wash. And one of the things that's in the river, there's lots of little fish, and they've all got their own different biology. And actually leeches, I've just seen, just quickly, leeches not quite as bad as Southeast Asia. I never got a leech in the Amazon. So there are leeches there, but they're nothing like you would get in Borneo, for example, where you kind of have to check yourself all the time. Yeah, I never got a leech, amazingly. But these little fish, so their typical biology, they're about that big, the tiny little things, and their biology is that they swim around in the river, and they pick little parasites off other animals. And so when you're in the river, you're washing, you get your biodegradable soap, and you're just sorting yourself out. And then you feel like and I don't know if you guys could think of places on your body that something might think was a parasite, but there is one place that every single time you go into the river, you're going to get attacked. And it's actually your nipples. So they think that it's like a little tick, or it's some kind of parasite. And so you're washing away, and you get just loads of little tick, 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 biting. Yeah, it's horrible. So you spend a lot of time covering up like this when you're trying to wash. Giant otters. Yes, we did see some giant otters. Amazingly. So when I've been in areas in the Amazon before, I didn't actually see that many animals, because when you're in disturbed areas, they kind of change their patterns. So river otters, they kind of know people, and they'd stay away. So previously I'd seen like a couple of glimpses, amazing time where one kind of got relatively close to us, but really very few. But as we were going up this remote river, what we'd had to do, so as we got to a waterfall, we would chop through the rainforest, and then we would grab all of our stuff and the boats, and we drag them through the rainforest, called portaging. And we drag them up through the rainforest, and then put them up at the top side of the waterfall. And as we did that 4 or 5 times to get more and more remote, you can imagine people it's such a lot of energy to do it, and if they're going to fish, they'd rather do it lower down. So you get less people going up there. And as we did it up the rework, we got to 4 times, absolutely no people. I mean, we didn't see another person really for about a month. And when you get up to these places, the animals, there's just a completely different world. And we would see troops of giant river otters, and they're very territorial animals. So they would come up to us, and they'd be going, rah, 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 rah. And Ashley, our guide, has this amazing thing he can do. He's learnt the otters really well. And if you see them first, so it's a troop of them over there, and if you see them first, you can kind of go, wah, 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 which kind of imitates the group's sort of territorial call. And they came over to us, and they're like making this sound, and then slowly but surely they're like, those aren't otters, and they actually get really close before they realize that, and then they go disappear off. But yeah, we saw loads of different groups of otters. Yeah, amazing. They're such incredible animals. But it's the same. My best bird. Okay, all right, Lizzie. So bird calls. That is probably one of the most amazing things about the Amazon. It's just the sound in the morning is so beautiful. There's all these crazy birds, and you can imagine. So I'm lying in my hammock, and in the early morning, and I'm just hearing these crazy sounds. And my favourite one is probably the screaming peahaw. It's this tiny. God, I need some water. I don't have any with me. It's a tiny little brown bird. It just looks so. It's most normal little brown job bird you've ever imagined, but it has this crazy sound. It's like, I'm not doing it justice at all, but it's, yeah, you should look it up. A screaming peahaw, crazy sound. But yeah, there'd be little birds going like, yeah, loads of them. I was sat in my hammock for a very long time practicing all these ones like toucans and arasaris. But yeah, amazing animals. And it's the same at night. So as you're there lying in your hammock, it's listening to the dawn chorus. It's also the same at night. These incredible cacophony of like cicadas and other kinds of bugs. Yeah, madness. But yes, onto other ones. So I've talked about some of the ugly things. Another one's centipedes and animals that get into your hammock. So as I told you, we were just in hammocks, and what our system with the hammocks is, it's kind of like a normal hammock, and then over the top there's a mosquito net that goes down to the floor, and then you kind of tie that mosquito net around to kind of enclose yourself so nothing can get in. Thank you very much. But the problem is that doesn't always work. There's so many bugs. They're absolutely everywhere, and they're pretty harmless most of the time. I mean, just like any other animal, they are more afraid of you than you are of them. But I'm not gonna lie. I did have a time when there was a centipede that went in. Oh, it's so horrible. I was setting up, I was looking to camera, and I was doing this kind of like trying to be all cool, like, oh, this is a centipede, I'm going to describe it now. And it just went inside my hammock. And obviously that just destroyed the entire situation, because I was obviously terrified at that point, because this is right before I go into bed. I never found the centipede. So I had to just at one stage just give up and get inside and be like, all right, well, I guess we're going to sleep together now. But yeah, awful. But then, in reality, how many legs on a centipede? I don't actually know the answer to that question. Yeah, I don't know the answer. I know that you can tell the difference between a millipede and a centipede. So millipedes are diplopoda and centipedes are chilopoda, and they're both in the same group, myriapoda. But diplopoda is 2 legs per segment. You can tell that with millipedes, whereas centipedes just have 1 and typically fewer legs. But millipedes can't hurt you, and centipedes often can. They've got some nasty pincers and a lot of venom. So yeah, it's good to be able to tell the difference between the 2 of them. But now moving away from the kind of ugly but a little bit harmless, and onto some of the more dangerous animals, snakes. So there are fer-de-lances in the rainforest, and they're really, really bad. And there was one time I was last in Guyana doing a research project, and we were working with students, and we had to remove 10 or 11 fer-de-lances from a camp before we set everything up. They're really cryptic, hidden away pit vipers that can give you a really nasty bite. And if you're in the middle of nowhere, it's not a good, you're not in a good place. So that's, I suppose, one of the actually dangerous things. Those and things like Brazilian wandering spiders that can really do you damage. But actually, by and large, again, if you rake away leaves before you set your camp, and you're careful, and you wear shoes when you go to the bathroom at night, and you make sure you carry a torch with you, you're pretty safe, and it doesn't usually, they're not after you, so it's usually all right. I'm aware that I'm rushing through time so quickly, but I'll get on to the jaguar. So as you're getting really, really remote, the animals, that you're seeing a lot more of them. We saw 21 tapirs, another animal that I'd not seen before. Amazing animals. Tapirs are kind of like a cross between a horse, a pig, and a hippo. I don't know, but they're really crazy animals with these trunks, like elephant-like, very short. Really amazing animals. But jaguars are a bit different. As we're going down the river, there's this kind of perfect time that we kind of discovered. Ash had told us that was after a really strong tropical storm the night before, where loads of rain was coming down. In the dry season, when all the water inside the rainforest is dried up, so the only water is down by the river's edge. And between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. the next day, it has to be beautifully sunny and warm. And then you have to drift silently down the river. And we would do that all the time. And anytime these conditions were happening, we were kind of, every bend of the river, we're like, you kind of breathe in, you get super excited. The idea that that's when the jaguars will come out, they'll be soaking wet, and they'll just lay on a branch, or they'll lie down on a rock to bask and let the sun bake off all the water that they've got caught up in during the night. And for the entire time we were out there, we would do this, and we didn't get any jaguars. Sorry, I'm just reading that. Yeah, we didn't get any jaguars, and there was a moment, we'd just gone up to the very headwaters, we reached the end, and we'd had this magical moment with a female and baby tapir, but no jaguars up there. And we were coming back down, and as you come back down, you're kind of losing a little bit of that hope. Every single time you portage down a waterfall, you lose a little bit more, and you're like, oh no. And we kind of got down to the very end, and we'd had some of these amazing moments, and we'd even had one moment where we were so close, and we'd gone up the river, and we came back down, and one had been there. It was lying down, and yeah, and we could see the indents and the footprints, and it was so recently there, and that was God. That moment was a real downer for us. But we got down to the very end, and sorry, we've got a question from Shirley. I'll answer when it comes to. But yes, we come down right to the end, and we'd gone down the last waterfall, and Ash says to us, he's like, to be honest, at this point, I think it's a little bit less likely that we're going to see a jaguar. So we stopped drifting, really, and we're on full pelt. So we're on the metal boat, and we've got the engine on, and we're just going straight down the river really, really fast. So just quickly, before I get to that, no, the jaguar isn't the largest predator in the Amazon. The largest predator is the black caiman. That's the biggest one. And sometimes we overlook those ones. It's the largest terrestrial predator. But yeah, no, black caiman are absolutely giant. And another animal I haven't spoken about that we did see are the anacondas. They're not the longest snake in the world. They're definitely the heaviest, really big, heavy, scary snakes that can get absolutely giant. I think the largest ever, believed recorded one was 27 feet long, really scary, big animals. But in terms of just bulk and big predators, the black caiman's biggest. But yes, anacondas are also there, and they're also very scary. Yeah, and so we come down to the end of the river, and it just and we hadn't even really been thinking about it, but it were the perfect conditions. We'd had rain the night before. It was really, really sunny, but because we kind of were in disbelief that we were going to see the jaguar at this point, we'd kind of forgotten about it. And I put my camera down. Luckily, it was right in front of me, because we're going down, and Shannon, he stood at the front, and he's just like, jaguar, 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 jaguar. And we kind of get into this frenzied panic. Ash is trying to figure out what to do. Do I turn off the engine or not? And luckily he didn't. He's done this so often. He understands this system so well that he knew that if he just shut off the engine, it would be a change, and the jaguar would just stand up and walk off. And so he just kept it on, but like lowered it down slightly so that there was no immediate change. And the jaguar, it took me quite a long time to see it, because I mean, they're stunning animals, spotted, beautiful creatures, but they are so hidden in the rainforest. Amazing camouflage. So I was staring for quite a while, and Shannon's eagle eye vision, he'd already seen it. And then there it was, this beautiful image of this jaguar sat like a kind of like a rainforest king on his throne on this long outcropped fallen tree, and he was just sat there staring at us. Absolutely amazing. And I just got the camera up just in time to film the Jaguar. But you can watch this entire journey because I was working with Beastly, Barcroft TV's Beastly channel, and they turned the whole trip into a kind of film that you can see it on. But yeah, it was probably the you can see, well, where you can see the Jaguar pic. If you go onto Beastly, Barcroft TV's Beastly channel on YouTube, you can see my trip to see the Jaguar there, and also Lizzie's trip to see to look into shark conservation and what people are doing around the world. So yeah, make sure you do that. But yeah, it was probably the most incredible moment of my entire life seeing that Jaguar. Yeah, there's a lot of all the bad things that are in the Amazon, like, well, considered bad things, it's worth it when you get an amazing experience like that. But Guyana is an incredible country. It's known as the land of giants because there are just so many giants there: harpy eagles, tapirs, jaguars, anacondas, black caiman, giant river otters. Yeah, and it's such an incredible place. But yes, if anyone has any questions. So did I meet humans too? Well, I wrote my dissertation originally. So when I first went to Guyana, I met a lot of indigenous tribes, and they're not how you might imagine indigenous tribes with loincloths and bows and arrows, although they do have bows and arrows. They're a lot of them are quite westernized. They understand, what's going on, but they have amazing communities, amazing kind of traditional knowledge. And I wrote my dissertation on these people and how they're kind of stewards of the environment and how they need to be protected so that they can protect the rainforest. But when we were up there, we didn't see a single person. But one of the craziest things that we saw, so as we were going further up, we would see petroglyphs, so ancient carvings in the rock that looked like monkeys or birds or fish, and there were some waves, it's really difficult to know what they were there for, but it might be in these beautiful areas, because we'd get to some places and they'd be so idyllic and there'd be great places to fish for certain fish, for example. And so we think that those petroglyphs were for to let other people coming know either this is my territory or this is a really good place for this particular thing or that particular thing. But it was absolutely incredible seeing kind of these things that maybe very few people on Earth have ever seen before. And when we got to the really far reaches, right up at the top, we found pottery, absolutely like miles and miles away from any other people. These pots and little shards of ancient pottery from people that could have been there 11,000 years ago potentially. But that's one thing that's interesting, because we think about areas like pristine rainforest, and actually many people have been to these places before. We just call them pristine because people aren't in them now, but people have been living on the rainforest and keeping it the way that it is for thousands of years. Well, it could be around 11,000 years ago, but I don't know. I mean, some of the earliest tribes in that particular area of Guyana were noted to be that time long ago, but I don't actually fully know the time. But yes, amazing place. A long time ago. But yeah, it's a really cool place, and I would just say, like, for me personally, I'll finish on this because I know I've gone way over. I think if anyone's interested in biology, or you're a student at school and you think that you'd be interested in doing this kind of stuff or looking into these remote places, it's honestly such a rewarding experience. I wasn't particularly good at a lot of like the harder subjects at school, but I loved biology. I worked really hard to make sure that I could go to university to study it. And I'm actually doing my PhD soon in biology at that same university. And so if you're interested in conservation, I can't think of a more rewarding career than studying biology. So yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much to Lizzie Daly, of course, for starting these incredible live lessons. Absolutely, definitely stay tuned. Gillian Burke's on later tonight. But yeah, Lizzie, hats off to you. What an amazing thing to come up with, an amazing thing to do to get people thinking and learning while we're all in isolation. So I hope you guys are having an awesome day today and everything's going okay with you in isolation. But yes, if there's one more time I'd like to ask about cameras. Okay, you can ask one question about, yeah, go for it, Sharkman Dan, and I'll answer before I go. But cameras is a really interesting one. So I was filming while I was there, and I'll grab my camera. So this here is my quite large camera, and all of these little like holes and bits and bobs inside get full of humidity, because it's around 95% humidity in the Amazon, and during the wet season it's even higher than that. So trying to keep kit like this alive is really, really, really hard. So I would just stick hundreds and hundreds of these little silica gel bag things that you get in electrical equipment sometimes into a dry bag, and I'd put the camera in there and I'd pray to the gods that it would survive. But there are lots of other ways that you can do it, and I'm absolutely not an expert, but so far so good. It's still alive. But yes, thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed my story about the Amazon, and yes, I'll see you very soon. Goodbye. Thank you.